Have you ever heard of a moment so unexpected, so raw, that it changes the emotional temperature of an entire country? A moment when one man, standing in a smoky Moscow bar, picked up a microphone and, with one Filipino song, melted the winter of a nation. Most people think this story began online with a viral clip. But the truth? It began years earlier, on a hot afternoon in Batangas, long before anyone knew who Dmitry Volkov was. Dmitry was 43, a quiet Russian engineer, the kind of man who kept his emotions locked behind layers of cold weather and routine. Before 2020, he barely knew the Philippines existed on the map. He had never heard Tagalog, never tasted adobo, never touched a karaoke mic in his life. But life has a strange way of leading people exactly where they need to be. When his company sent him to the Philippines for a 6-month project, he expected chaos, humidity, traffic, and maybe a culture shock bad enough to regret the whole trip. What he didn't expect was music. Not the polished, staged kind, but music that lived in the streets, music that breathed through people, music that felt like sunshine on skin. In Russia, people only sang during weddings or when they were drunk. But in the Philippines, everyone sang. Everywhere, every time. Workers hammering steel beams harmonized. Jeepney drivers hummed between honks. Students belted out ballads like everyday breathing. Even the guards at the mall sang while checking bags. For Dmitry, it was confusing, then charming, then strangely comforting. One night, after a long day on the construction site, his Filipino co-workers pulled him into a small, colorful karaoke bar, the kind with plastic chairs, neon lights, and a magic sing that had been punched thousands of times. They laughed, shouted, shared food, and passed the mic around as if the entire world existed inside that tiny room. Then someone selected a song Dmitry had never heard before. The guitar began, slow, haunting, and soft. The room suddenly grew quiet. The song was Anak. Even without understanding the words, Dmitry felt something heavy sink into his chest. The melody wrapped around him like a story he somehow already knew. And when the singer reached the chorus, he felt his throat tighten. "What does Anak mean?" he whispered. His co-worker smiled gently. "It means child." That night, Dmitry didn't sleep. He lay on his small rented bed, staring at the ceiling while that melody replayed again and again. It made him think of his mother, the woman he hadn't spoken to in years after a pointless argument he could barely remember. The next morning, he downloaded the song. He played it on repeat, and every time, something inside him cracked a little more. When his contract ended and he returned to Russia, he brought only one souvenir: a USB filled with Filipino songs. Winter swallowed St. Petersburg the moment he landed. Cold, silent, emotionless. But now, something inside him had changed. Every night in his tiny apartment he played Anak, not understanding the exact words, but feeling every single one. One quiet evening, he finally did something he had been afraid to do for years. He called his mother. She answered, older, weaker, but gentle. He didn't know what to say, so he pressed the phone to his speaker, and he let Anak speak for him. When the song ended, he heard soft crying. "That's beautiful, my son," she whispered. Months passed. Nothing extraordinary happened. Dmitry went to work, ate alone, walked through silent Russian streets, but the song stayed inside him, warm, glowing, alive. Then came the night that would change everything. A snowy Friday, a crowded bar in Moscow. A karaoke machine wheezing through old songs. His friends pushed the mic to him. "Your turn," he hesitated. His hands trembled. Then he scrolled through the list and found it. Anak, Freddie Aguilar. The screen lit up blue. The first guitar note played. People kept drinking and laughing. But the moment Dmitry opened his mouth, everything changed. His voice cracked, his lips trembled. Tears fell before he could stop them. No one understood the lyrics, but everyone felt them. Even the bartender froze. Someone recorded it, someone posted it, and within hours, the world saw it. A Russian man crying while singing a Filipino classic, authentic.raw, unfiltered. It hit millions like an emotional thunderstorm. He sings like the song is his story. That's real emotion. Filipino songs are touching Russian hearts. But the story didn't stop there. Across Russia, a quiet transformation began. People who never sang started singing. Bars added Tagalog songs to their playlists. Karaoke stores sold out of microphones. TikTok filled with Russians belting out Dahil Sa'yo, Bakit Pa, and Tuloy Pa Rin, with thick accents but pure sincerity. And somewhere in Siberia, a young teacher named Irina Petrova saw Dimitri's video. Her town was frozen 9 months a year. People rarely smiled, children rarely laughed. So she tried something bold. She introduced Filipino songs to her students. First, Tuloy Pa Rin. They giggled at the accent. They stumbled over the words, but slowly, they sang. And when they sang, their faces lit up. Parents noticed their kids were happier. The local radio station played the Russian-Siberian version of a Filipino classic. It was the moment a movement began. The Philippine Embassy took notice. Then the Russian Ministry of Culture, then international media. They created the first-ever Filipino-Russian musical exchange. They called it Songs Without Borders. And on one historic night, Dimitri stood on stage with the Filipino choir on one side and Irina's snow choir on the other. He sang Anak in Russian. They answered in Tagalog. Their voices rose into the cold sky like one shared heartbeat. The audience cried. The world listened. And two nations, once strangers, became connected through a single melody. After that night, something unbelievable happened across Russia. Hospitals played Filipino songs to help patients recover. Schools taught Tagalog lyrics to encourage empathy. Old men in retirement homes sang karaoke again after years of silence. Teenagers found comfort in Tuloy Pa Rin during their struggles. Psychologists called it the warmth movement. Social workers called it emotional healing through music. And ordinary people called it the Filipino miracle. By 2024, the Russian winter didn't feel as cold anymore, because now, everywhere, people were singing. And every time someone selected Anak on a karaoke machine, the room went silent, not out of sadness, but gratitude. When Dimitri eventually passed away, years later, Russia and the Philippines held a joint online tribute. Millions watched, millions sang, millions cried, and the highest-liked comment said, "A Filipino wrote the song." A Russian carried it, but now the world sings it. Because warmth isn't a place, it's a song you feel in your heart. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll. Tell me in the comments what Filipino song changed your life. Hit like to support more stories like this. Subscribe, because the next story will hit even deeper. Who knows? Your favorite song might be the next to change the world.